Hello, people. This week I read Sphere by Michael Crichton. Look at him. It's him right there. Hardback edition. He is a fantastic writer. All of his books so far, I'm putting in ye old, modern classics. So like up there with your Jane Austens and your Sherlock Holmes. I find a lot of his books should be in the same, not the same category, because those are the classics. Frankenstein. But what those are, just absolutely rock solid, great for generation after generation stories. That's what his books do too. I don't know what's going on or why, but back in the day, probably still do it now, I just get more of my books off Kindle. They did this, I don't know if this comes up. This is a kind of like a unsmooth, choppy. I don't know why they do this on books. I haven't liked it yet. And I personally don't care for this. These in general, I don't really like. But this one is also kind of ugly. It's kind of ugly. But it was made back in the day, so we're not going to judge them too hard. See, on its own, I feel like the book just looks better. Okay, so I believe I watched the movie before I saw the book. A lot of his books become movies, and if you read them, you kind of get a sense as to why. You get, I don't know, it's almost like written with a commercial break in it, if that makes sense, but not in an annoying way. Not like here's this interlude where we're going to discuss sideways things, but the beat sort of modern TV movies have, where it builds, leaves you high enough to come back through the commercials, and then carries that beat on. His kind of do that. So his books have great, momentum. You buy in, and then you are really along for the ride, and he doesn't let you down. We start with a guy named Norman, and he's just, in some far-flung location. He's already been in, 6 airports deep somewhere in the Pacific or some mess. He's just way out in the middle of nowhere, and there are very mysterious reasons. This book has it's like a mystery science fiction vibe, but I have to say it's light on your mystery thriller situation. Now, I know some people might say, well, it's because you saw the movie and you know what's going to happen, but it's really not the case. You can read it. It just doesn't come hard as a mystery. It doesn't come hard as scary or anything like this. I would know I'm a complete sucker for a horror book. It's why I've sort of reviewed those the least, because I'm a big scaredy cat when it comes to those. So I don't. But this doesn't pull you into that very much at all. It's much more science fiction than horror thriller. So if you're a scaredy cat like me, you don't have to worry too much about that. He meets a military man, or Norman, who is a psychologist. He'll be brought in to crash sites and, I guess, help people through this traumatical moment. He's talking to a guy named Barnes, a military Navy guy. We get dialogue in these books are very good. Dialogue here is fantastic. A lot of what needs to be talked about, it sounds weird, but we let our characters do it. So if I'm going to describe to you how, space-time works, You know, the ye old ball on a plane, and it's space time. I'm not, as the author, going to say that. I'm going to let one of the characters in the book say it. Or two characters talking to a third. It takes what could be a boring just description of a concept and turns it into both a description of a concept as well as informing the reader about the characters. So it's 2 for 1, so to speak. So what he does, first dialogue you see, we're moving along and he has a random element occur. So the power goes out. Again, I'm reading a book. It just started. I'm barely anyway in. And I have weird stuff happening. So my reader brain is like, store that. And my present brain, sort of what's there in the scene, gets a natural energy. Power can go out on people, especially if you're in far-flung locations. It makes it feel more real. Because, what is it? Every book has buy-in. You need to have a reason. You will have some element that's, well, what is it? They're words, right? They're not pictures. Well, they are little pictures. You have to take these little pictures and make people believe the meaning of them. That's the buy-in. Every book has it. When every reader reaches for a book, there's that buy-in. We want to be told such and such story. This one happens to be about a sphere. That's it. That's our only clue. So you have a little leeway. You have a little runway as an author. Some squander it, some don't. He takes the time early on to flesh out the realism. You know this is coming. That's what you're here for. In between this, people eat food. People, I gotta go poop. People have power outage issues. A boss dealing with an underling. Realistic things that a reader can, in real life, relate to. Attaches you closer, so when the crazy happens, you'll fall away from real, but not all the way off the book. If that makes sense. Buy-in. He doesn't waste his time or yours. He gets the story going, but is still building out everything that needs to be built out. He does this very well in all of his books. Also in that vein, in this first conversation, we have, just fantastical next to very realistic. So, Barnes is not as forthcoming as the reader or Norman, the character, wants him to be. We're already like, we're reading it going, where's the sphere? He's reading it like, why am I here? Our authors put us next to our character already in sort of the movement of the narration. It's genius. But we finally come to it, and he's like, beneath our feet, because we're out in the ocean, so 1,000 feet below us, there's a ship. And it's a alien, it's a spacecraft. And Barnes is meaning like it's an alien spacecraft. But Norman just doesn't even register. It's so far beyond what he would think. He's just automatically thinking that has to be some stealth military craft. And it's just kind of funny to me, because that's what most people would think. Most reasonable people. Our Norman is around 50, 53. A 53-year-old person who is brought to a real life situation wouldn't automatically jump to, I believe you that there's an alien spacecraft beneath us. His brain would take a second to even accept that. So his brain is working on a problem of, hidden military craft, and thinking there are humans down there, and if it's that far down, there can't be survivors, so, why am I here? And it's just funny because it takes a while for him to be like, so how long has this ship been down there? And the military guy's like, a rough guess is about 300 years. Boom, chapter end. And you're automatic like, well, I gotta go to the next chapter. Very smart writing. R. Norman is here. The only reason he's here, is some goofy governmental stuff. So we have picture a young Norman with a young family, a wife, some crumb crunching kids, and sort of the job. He just got laid off from the college he's at. What do they say? They don't think study of anxiety is that big of a deal. Remember, it's like 1990 something in story, I think. But like in the 90s, we would think different about anxiety versus now. So he's out of work. He doesn't know what he's going to do. And a government official comes from the State Department. And he's very concerned about America's lack of readiness when it comes to possible aliens invasion / confrontation. And Norman on the inside is like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. But on the outside, he's like, it's a job is a job. So he gets, and I'm like, this is just classic. This would be classic government waste, right? This is the kind of program where you hire a psychologist and he does all these studies and it costs us, I don't know, $20 million or whatever the crap it costs. And you look at it and you're like, why are we researching alien invasions? It's one of those just government waste programs. What do they call it? The UFL. ULF. Unidentified life form. That's what he calls them because he's trying to sound professional. He meets a military guy who's like, I know you're doing this study and we might not know what aliens are coming, but certainly a nuke should be able to kill them, right? And he's like, yeah, probably. The military guy's like, good. Make sure to stress that in your report, that nukes can kill it. I need that stressed. So he's like, whatever I gotta say. He gets the job. He makes this report. He interviews people. He has ideas. He, after all this, because as much as it's a joke to him, he's also like, I guess, doing work serious enough that he could pass a visual test here. You know, he's not just writing stuff down and not questioning people or doing the legwork. It is a paying gig. He's just not serious in his mind about it. He says, you need strong-willed and mentally set people because the presence of it alone might cause, uncontrolled terror. Which is a different angle on most, of course, first contact kind of stories. Probably more realistic. If you see some 9-foot jellyfish kind of creature, most people would just... You've only ever seen human beings as intelligent, and now there's this other thing that's intelligent. A normal person might not just be able to register their whole worldview shifting and, sort of freak the crap out. So, when they find an alien craft, someone at the Navy's like, I have this on file, and it's his paper, so they're like, bring him in. They bring him in, and they bring the crew, essentially, that he thought you should have. A Fielding, I think it's Ted Fielding, an astrophysicist and planetary geologist. Ted is the type of guy who will steal credit. If you have a good idea in the back room, he'll walk out in front of everyone, present that as his. Beth Elizabeth, a zoologist / biochemist. She's a woman. Harold Adams, a mathematician / logician. A logician, like logic. A logic person. He's black. And Arthur Levine, a marine biologist / biochemist. And him, the psychologist, to keep track of everyone's mental well-being. Now, I mention all of those little specific things because it starts to have like impact on the story. Of course, just this your sphere starts messing with people's heads, and that internal, not even hard internal, meaning this is how I think about myself inside, but the deep subconscious starts to have a bearing on what's happening to everyone else. That could be scary. People's deep, not even their casual, not even wake them up at 3 in the morning thoughts, but deep subconscious thoughts start to have an effect. That's why I mentioned those. It's both a good way to add, I guess, diversity to a story without making it just cheap, useless diversity. So it's kind of woke without being woke, if that's an issue for you. So we have spaceship. And again, I came for a sphere. I'm not going to be exactly happy until I find said sphere. But if you're going to give me, a 2,000 foot long spaceship that's 190 feet wide, 300 years old, somehow at the bottom of the ocean, I'm not going to toss it out, right? I want to check it out. I'm interested. If I'm interested in a sphere, I'm definitely interested in this ship. It's unexpected, so I'm already now off kilter, but I'm going along for the ride. We then place our characters at the bottom of the ocean. They have these underwater habitations of some kind. I think they're real as a concept. I'm not sure how much actual traction they've got. I gotta assume Navy has some stuff all over the place in all kind of different ways. But I think it serves more to isolate, right? Which just helps with the variables. You're going to have a lot to deal with already. Why overcomplicate it? So it's your classic science fiction, it's, what is it? The thing where we're out in the Arctic Circle. Find a way to get everyone else away, and so I can just have a small pool of people be dealing with this situation. It's one of these. It's not... It just makes the story easier to go along with. So we get down to this alien ship. It's somehow, I guess, sealed off enough underwater that they can approach it. I'm not sure how that worked. Visually in my head, I guess. But again, I'm not worried too much about it. They do a lot of underwater spacewalks, so to say. But we never go to space. So we go to... It's our crew. We're going to go open the door. We're going to push the button because, we thought it was an alien ship, but then when we zoom a camera on it, the buttons say, like open, and it's in English, and there are colors. So now we're thinking it's a human ship. What is it? We're thinking it's a human ship, but they're like, how can it be here if it's not ours? And then our mathematician, who our author loves using mathematicians, our mathematician says it has no damage. It didn't crash here. It just appeared here. So that means it's probably a time travel ship. And I'm sitting there like, if I'm accepting an alien ship, I can accept a time travel ship. It just makes things a little bit more complicated. But I'll take it. It's a fun... It plays with science fiction ideas really well. Like, not just theorize about the toy, but let's pick it up and play with it. Let's do something. So now I have this time travel ship we're trying to get into. We all gather around it. And... what is it? What's the guy's name? Ted. Ted is like, let's say prophetic, historical words before we go in. I'm Ted. I've found the door. I'm entering now, one small step for man. He wants one of these moments. But they really start to bicker about it. And almost in a real petty, childish way. And so, it's a genius moment. But it's not normal. And by normal, I mean, in terms of these books. these books being alien books. Normally, everyone's buttoned up and adult and understanding the seriousness of their situation. So, it's just off kilter enough that of course, I notice it. And it's not like serious argument, petty. But then I also then will remember the lights flickering. And of course, I have my buy-in being Sphere, the title, the cover, the reason I reached for this book. All of that swirls in my head, like, what do we say, like a nice wine. The fragrance in my nose, all the flavors in my mouth. And without telling me, he never says it. He never says it, but without telling you, you feel that something is acting on our people before we're even in the ship. And in the back of my head, because I'm focused on the story as I'm reading it, in the back of my head, I start to wonder when that effect actually started to take place. And we don't really get a great answer, which is part of the mystery of the thriller. You see? It's just genius. It's just he didn't waste his moments throughout this whole book. He really doesn't. So inside we find a fully set ship. It's a futuristic spacecraft of some kind, clearly made for humans because we fit in it, and the buttons look like buttons we would use, but they're holographic, and there's food in like foil wrapping, like we would package it. The whole 9 yards. It's everything you'd need, but there's no people. And of course, it's just this large ship, and it's just constant. What I like is that now it's just constant, like, theory. It was just fun sci-fi theory on top of theory. We get into discussions about black holes, about why would the ship come here. Maybe it went out and back, and in the way back, it missed its landing spot and landed in the past, given the nature of a theoretical time travel and how the layers may be stacked close together, and the fact that they're human beings and mistakes can happen. So that's our first day on the ship, is just sort of great theory crafting, great, like, constant shocks on here's how a light switch works, and I guess this is food, but that doesn't make sense if it's 300 years old, but one of them wants to eat it. And constantly that undercurrent of abnormal acting. By that I mean everyone's not acting like a scientist and professional about what they're seeing. They're a little petulant. Again, that lizard brain comes into play, that deep emotional / psychological, that the deep inner self has a foothold here. And so a normal social interaction is much more perilous. So when we meet normal people in town, you say normal things, but you don't say, like, your shirt is ugly, like a 2-year-old would. That lizard brain's thinking it. Well, that comes to the forefront with these people constantly. You would think, bro, you're on a spaceship. Don't you want to calm down and research this? But they never let these things go, because just as we're getting used to time travel, one of them finds what we know we'd find: a sphere, just a big. Now this thing doesn't look like the rest of the ship. This thing has its own special room. This thing looks alien. If anything can look alien, it's this thing. Big sphere. Some kind of weird runes on it, maybe. How do I get in? Do we get in? Right now, those questions come at us. And they're just great conceptual questions. So, if we found an alien artifact on a time-traveling ship, we have to now think, do we open it? Is it here to be safe? Did they send it to us? If they sent it, they'd know we'd open it. Did they send it to kill us? Did they send it so that, did it kill them in the future? And before they all died, they sent it back so we'd have more time to figure out how to fix it. The questions just keep growing out of this thing. And that's when he brings up the anthropomorphic problem. This being that for stories and for most people's concepts, any life form you find is sort of human-based because we are human-based. But the theory is that we are a collection of the evolutionary choices that have been made in the millions of years that it's taken us to evolve. So, the fact that, we like movies is because we have eyes. We listen to verbal cues because we have voices. We have voices because we have ears. Seems obvious, but what if you're a creature that grew up... What does it say? What if it's an alien that never had eyes and just communicates through, pressure or vibrations? Then us talking could to it sound like some menacing, I'm going to kill you situation. They even bring up, what if it's not killable in any kind of a way? Because they're like, well, it won't have the sanctity of life? He's like, no. What if it just can't die? And so the concept of death doesn't apply to it at all. As unfathomable as we find not dying, it might find the concept of dying. And so it might not have a qualm about chopping people up. I'm going to cut him up to see what he looked like inside. Because that's what people do to me. That's how we say hello. And I'm like, bro, you just killed him. And he's like, what are you talking about? What does that mean? What did they say? They brought up... Because the military guy's like, he just can't square that away. He's like, everything has to be able to die. And they're like, not if it's a... What did they say? Not if it's a four-dimensional creature. Wherein the bulk of its consciousness is in the fourth dimension. And so we see essentially like an arm. It's communicating. It gets information from that limb. But if you cut it and you blow it up, it's essentially like clipping its nail. Because you're like, well, it clipped my nail. Whatever was going on over there. Because I'm a four-dimensional creature. And it's not touching any of this. Because our guns don't shoot in the fourth dimension. Right? We get this kind of wild about it. But then they bring up, what do they say? Well, he goes, what's the worst case scenario? He goes, worst case scenario is if it behaves in a way that interferes with our basic life functions. They use AIDS as the example. AIDS being a virus that kills your immune system. That's how it functions. Its function kills you. But it could just be worse than that, because that's just a virus. We're talking the pinnacle of whatever that train of evolution would have been. So if it evolved off of that, this other track, what do they say? It could be an alien that breathes in air but expels cyanide gas. It could, excrete radioactive waste. Whatever it eats, it turns into radioactive waste. The possibilities are endless. He says it might not hurt us at all. It might breathe out something that makes plants stop, photosynthesizing. And then all the plants die. And then humanity's dead because there's no vegetation on Earth. And some of it, you're like, well, we're getting a little far-fetched. But when you get down to chemicals, you kind of aren't. If you Google, what is it? Gallium versus an aluminum can. Or mercury versus aluminum. You see some freaky stuff. I've heard of like just a drop or two, right? You're just introducing some of this chemical to this other chemical. And the process basically continues throughout the entirety of the introduced state. So like let's just say in concept, a drop of gallium on an aluminum engine block, eventually, if you don't, interfere with it, will make the entire engine block like powder, like you could put your thumb through it. It eats through the entire process of it, and it's not like scalable, like a mess, right? Like, so if you get some part wet of a shirt, it doesn't make the whole shirt wet. But chemical reactions don't just necessarily work that way. In theory, if you had some weird space alien, it could breathe out just the right chemical that readjusts all our air, and then we all die, right? So this is the ideas they're messing with. And it does, it just brings up a great point, which is, if we found this thing, should we mess with it? Of course we're going to mess with it. We'll all kill someday everyone's worried about World War III and nukes, and it's going to be some scientist opening Pandora's box that does us all in, right? Some curiously curious scientist who can't help himself, right? Obviously, someone gets in the sphere at some point, and things just go from freaky to worse. What is it? We get great visuals. When we start communicating with the, is that coming in clear? This over here. Ones and zeros. I like when books do this for some reason. Let me just play around with some visual here. Where you start to communicate with some entity, right? And it's just, look at this swirliness. It's fun. As it should be. I've found an alien artifact. I should be having fun. We start communicating with it, and that's just a good chunk of the book is just this odd series of the inexplicable. Giant squids killing people, swarms of jellyfish killing people, shrimp that exist but cannot physically exist because they don't have any way to ingest food or excrete food, etc., etc. It's very fun. The whole time while you're in it, you're constantly going like, don't y'all see what's happening? Because the whole time they're in it, they keep like really they're real close to their nose, right? So if the biologist or zoologist sees this new shrimp, it's like they can't help themselves but play with it like they've discovered something new. Even though you should be freaking out and understanding that maybe this alien artifact's already affecting you, right? They never connect the dots. Of course the reader did. And so you're doing the old, like scream for them to get out energy. But that's sort of the second half of the book. It's good, solid, I guess you'd say sci-fi horror, but heavy on the sci-fi, light on the horror, I would say. Most everyone dies except 3 people by the end. It's our mathematician, Harold, our zoologist, Beth, and Norman, the psychologist. Turns out, like I was saying earlier with your internal mattering, the sphere can make manifest your thoughts, essentially. Controlled or otherwise. If you had nightmares about a giant squid, and that's hard pressed in your brain, then a giant squid attacks. But who knows what the limit of this is. It was during the course of the book making people appear where people couldn't appear. And making life forms where life form doesn't exist. Now, personally, as I was reading, I'm like, why didn't anyone think to, like, imagine the ship flying up into, like, Roswell, where there's a bunch of scientists who could help you out? But I think it's because it's, one, they didn't understand it, so the root part of your brain took over, and you don't have, I guess, complex thoughts in the root part of your brain. It's just subconscious. I know it starts making the lady prettier. They describe her as as physically strong, but maybe not attractive. But then as time goes on, because that's just her internal. The internal wants to be more attractive, and is making her more attractive. The black guy has certain issues with maybe thinking people are looking down on him or looking at him sideways because he's black, and that's what starts to happen. And so then he starts to think it'd be nice if there were more crew that were black, and crew that don't exist that are black start showing up, this kind of thing. Our therapist, who is supposed to be the one there to keep everyone lined up, of course, has his own internal flaws that are manifesting themselves on other people, killing people, etc., etc. They eventually get a sub, shoot up to the surface, and up there they have a discussion as to, they're now aware of what the sphere does. It's bringing these thoughts to reality. It's too much, maybe for humans, and we should all, what does he say? We should all just agree in our minds to forget the sphere. And they're trying to think through the logic of it, but they can't because they don't know how the technology works. And so the mathematicians sort of essentially saying, I think the tech will handle the issues. So that some people may have said we're here for a sphere on the phone, that memory will be changed in that person, so that there's not a worry about anyone figuring this out. So they, in their heads, they say we're going to imagine that we're here investigating a simple crash, and that in the course of that investigation the equipment malfunctions, and that's why everyone else dies except us three who happen to be on the submarine. And I'm like, well, we're sort of quietly ignoring the fact that we may have subconsciously murdered everyone else on the crew, which is sort of a benefit to us to not end up in jail, I guess. But I'm going to not say that too loud because they didn't either. But they agree to this. The therapist does, the mathematician, and Beth. And he holds this thought in his head. Okay, where was I? I had a little break, so I'm trying to remember. I think I was at forget. I think they all agree to forget. Norman, I think for certain, is like, I'm out. That was a horror show. I didn't like my inner self being, exposed and showing up, and I didn't like it. So I think he forgets. To him, it's a tragedy that he'll live with forever, that those people died and he lived. Survival's guilt kind of situation. But he does find like a weird card in his jacket of like a red Corvette, so maybe he can't forget even if he wants to. I know someone on the radio mentions a giant squid. And did anyone remember talking about a giant squid? And Harold's like, no, I don't remember that. Even though from our book we just realized, that's a childhood memory of his, reading 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Ye old giant squid. And, what is it? The last line is we're saying Beth is, you're very lovely looking. And what is it? Beth did not seem to hear, but then she turned towards him slowly. Why, thank you, Norman, she said, and she smiled. And I'm like, if that's not your classic horror, enemy still alive, final shot, I don't know what is. Classic horror. So, I guess in this world, that sphere's still alive, doing who knows what. Who knows how far it spreads. And even if it doesn't spread, if it still can do something with just these three people's subconscious running, it could be world changing. But we don't get any answers. We're not any closer to solving the mystery. I don't believe we ever got a sequel, which I'm glad about. We don't really want the answers. We want the mystery more, I think. Makes it for a funner book. And as I didn't remember like the story heavily in my mind from the movie, but I feel like I'll remember the book a lot better. I don't know if that makes any sense. I feel like maybe the movie tried to sell horror too much, and the book just sort of let things ride a little better. But it's a fantastic book. I highly recommend Sphere. I actually highly recommend any of his books. He's fantastic. And that's essentially Sphere. I like that there's fear in Sphere. But you know what you don't have to be afraid of? These ads. These are my books. I wrote them. None of these are horror because I don't want to do horror because I'm a big chicken. Also, it's hot in Texas, so I left my fan on, and I hope it's not too much of an auditory issue because I don't want to sit in this room without it going. I appreciate all of your patience. You can get my books on Amazon. You can subscribe to the channel. You can just watch. You can comment. We're good with anything, as long as you're having fun. You'll have fun if you read this book. I think you'll have fun if you read my books too. Alright, I'm done. Okay. I will talk to you all next week.